Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. We tell each other to have a happy new year, but what does it take for someone to actually start the year right? And what tools do people need to help sustain a good attitude over time? Those are some of the questions we'll put to our guests today, who are experts in mindfulness, positive thinking, and recognizing the strengths we already have to get through difficult times. It's 2026, and we're talking about ways to make it the best year possible. We're back after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. In our last story, we shared how leaders with the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Treatment and Recovery Services say they're making strides in opioid addiction treatment. That includes work through Great Circle Recovery in Oregon. The tribe also provides transitional housing services through Main Street Recovery, a program with supportive housing which also helps address mental health and addiction services on site. Kelly Rao is the Executive Director of Health Services for the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde.
Instead of having to go to a facility where you might get 21 days or 28 days, that's really been something that is more prescribed by insurance than it really is for the best thing for a person to have. We're not putting a limit on that. We're saying what is good for you is what we want you to do. We're letting them stay as long as they need to get well. So that's become another piece in the continuum of care for us. So we're really working hard to make sure people can get well, and we're creating a whole community of recovery here at the reservation.
Culture is a key aspect in the services, says Jennifer Worth, the Operations Director for Main Street Recovery.
Being able to provide that holistic approach with access to mental health and substance use, and kind of figuring out what the needs are and being able to tailor that to each person that comes through. There's lots of activities and different things that we're able to take the residents to. So for instance, tomorrow they're going to be working on making paddles. And the other day they came in and they had been part of this carving class, and they had all carved this ladle that's going to be used for a future service that we'll be adding on site at Main Street. So things like that are really important.
Brian Crable is a canoe maker who teaches paddle making and canoeing.
The canoe has just brought back so much our way of life all around the canoe. That bucket brigade line that we feel when we're all pulling together and we're all going forward, we're all making that forward movement, and it helps with our noggins. If you should need it. If you don't, you're good. But if you should need some help of motivation and pushing you forward and to try new things, however that is, that are good for you, and it's wicked fun.
For people on their mental health and recovery journey, having trusted support is of great value, says Sydney Clark, a recovering addict and peer support specialist supervisor with the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde.
I walk with them, letting them know that they're not alone and that it's okay to reach out. It's okay to feel scared, and it's okay to question things, because I didn't know what I could question and what I couldn't question, and go into meetings having someone sit there with you that might know those questions to ask, because that trauma that you're going through right then and there. I've always loved helping people because it helps feed my soul. To be able to learn what would help us grow as a tribe, and each one of us play a big role in peer support, helps get people walk through a door that they normally probably would have never ever walked through.
Highlighted throughout the services is the resilience of Indigenous people, says Rao.
My hope is that we can get out of this cycle of seeking out artificial substance to hide our pain, to hide our trauma, that we're not afraid to let that out and to seek out our cultural ways to heal ourselves. For us, and especially health and wellness, it becomes this plan of no matter who you are, at what stage of life you're in, we're here for you, and we want you to be able to become a part of something bigger, and that when you're ready, we're here for you.
This story is a collaboration with First Nations Experience Television with support from the Public Welfare Foundation. I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support from Clarkson Potter, publisher of Turtle Island, Foods and Traditions of the Indigenous Peoples of North America by Native American chef Sean Sherman. With ancestral and modern recipes, this cookbook showcases diverse foodways of the continent's regions.
Skookdash. For more than 40 years, Ramona Farms has revived ancient traditional foods, tepary beans, pinoli, polentas, and more, all from store.ramonafarms.com. Ramona Farms supports this show. Omye.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. After fireworks, champagne toasts, and the midnight countdown, it's time to get serious about getting on the right path to make the coming year better than ever. A lot of people see the start of a new year as a good place to reset, make improvements in their mental and physical health. Of the people who make New Year's resolutions, numerous surveys find the vast majority give up within the first month. But that doesn't mean self-improvement is hopeless. Our guests today each have unique skills that help themselves and others tap into their own strengths. We're going to hear from them today about ways to build a good foundation for optimism and effectiveness. You can contribute too. How do you approach the promise of the coming year? Give us a call, 1-800-996-2848. That number is also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us now from San Diego, California is DJ Vanis. He is a motivational storyteller, host of the PBS special Discovering Your Warrior Spirit, and the author of The Warrior Within, published by Penguin Random House. He is Odawa. DJ, good morning. Happy New Year and welcome back to NAC.
Good morning, Sean. Happy New Year to you and everybody listening today.
Also on the show today and joining us from Bozeman, Montana is Dr. Eduardo Duran. He is a psychologist and author of Healing the Soul Wound. He is Apache, Tewa, and Lakota. Ed, good morning and Happy New Year to you as well. Welcome to our show.
Yes, thank you, and blessings in the new year.
Absolutely. Well, I want to go ahead and begin with DJ because, DJ, you're kind of our go-to New Year's guest. You've been with us many times, and you always offer advice on how to best usher in a new calendar year. Is there one piece of advice you offer people to start the new year right, especially if the previous year might have been, I don't know, maybe kind of challenging?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And yes, I always get excited about this time of year because I'm of that belief that every year that goes by, we have skills and, experiences that we can make this upcoming year the best year we've ever had. Regardless of how good or bad it's been in the past, we can't change what happened 5 minutes ago, let alone 5 months ago or 5 years ago. But we can make different choices in how we approach our path right now going forward. And so, and I always, especially with the resolutions, I love that quote you said, most resolutions people give up in the first month. It's the small things that we do to make change that really stick. Doing these dramatic self-improvement, a type of initiatives without a game plan on how to get there, it sets us up for frustration. I've heard some things over the years, I'm gonna lose that last 10 pounds of weight. This is the year. And then they eat a diet of oranges and lettuce, and that lasts for about 2 hours. So start small, stay consistent, gather the right support around you, and move in the direction that you choose. I know this has been a chaotic last year for a lot of people, and just to be able to take those small steps, that's sustainable. We can do that day in and day out, not doing these dramatic sweeps where we overwhelm ourselves and put ourselves under such pressure that we, feel like we can't move forward and make something good happen this year. And we always can. That's in our power.
Well, what I like about what you're saying, DJ, is these small changes, eventually they'll add up to something big.
That's it. Anybody ever play with Legos? Those little blocks that you can, one piece after another, you can build a giant castle in your kitchen, which really makes your mom upset when she doesn't have room to cook. But at the same time, that's the way life works. Those small choices that we make in the positive, in the right direction, and we're not always going to get that 100%. We're going to stumble. We're going to make bad calls. But the more we keep making those positive choices in the right direction, we build on that. It creates momentum. It creates a sense of esteem, self-esteem. It creates a sense of strength, inner strength, to know that we can do this. We don't have to do it all today. We just need to take small steps in the right direction. That's what gets us to a higher place in our lives.
You know, DJ Vanis is on the show when we get the classic toy analogies. Today, it's Legos. Last year, I think it was Weebles. But yeah, no, I'm feeling this all, DJ, very much.
Old school toys.
Yeah. What about people who might be still struggling, maybe emotional wounds or psychological wounds from the past year? Is there any general advice you can give someone?
Yeah, that's something that, well, first of all, struggle is universal. You know, we're all going through something. You know, this might have been a really terrible year for certain folks out there listening through loss, through pain. And when we have that, I found that that's more often the case than not, is we're carrying more than we need to in our kind of emotional backpacks. And, you know, I would say first and foremost, you know, to be able to find a way to deal with that, to get those emotions out of you, to work on fixing, you know, that pain. Whether we do it through traditional means, whether we do it through therapy, whether we do it through journaling or, you know, self work, being able to release ourselves from that is something only we can do. But I do know that if we don't find a way to release those emotions and get to the bottom of what happened and why we feel the way that we feel, what we tend to do is suppress it. We carry it, we stuff it away into a backpack that ends up becoming like a 900-pound backpack of stuff. And the problem is we run out of places to stuff the stuff. And then it starts to leak out in ways that we don't want it to. It starts to affect our relationships, our behavior, our mental well-being, you know, our performance and what we do at work. And so it's a much better way, you know, much better outcome to actually deal with those things. You know, however, you know, having a good support structure is also key to that, being able to vent, to get stuff off of our chest, to be able to find out what's going on. Because really at the end of the day, everybody's going to go through hard times and pain. That's inevitable. Mm-hmm. But I've also learned that going through the hardest times in our lives can bring out the best stuff we never knew we had. But the way that we do that is, you know, by first of all making the right choices on how we handle it, and that starts with how we think about what we're going through. And when we get that right mindset about where we are, what we intend to do, that changes everything. That starts to affect our behavior, the choices that we make. You know, when we have the intention of, I want to release this emotional pain. I want to get to the bottom of what I just went through this past year so that I can make this year better than last year was. When we start off with that intention, that mindset, and the other mindset too is that pain is universal. We all go through pain, but suffering is optional, meaning that sometimes we beat ourselves up, we shove ourselves into a corner, we say ugly things to ourselves like, well, that's what I deserve. And these are things that don't come from us. They come from programming or the way that, you know, our past experiences, and they affect the way that we handle those struggles. But this is where I know this is where our power is. Uh-huh. We don't control the outside world. You know, we can't prevent people from hurting us, from, you know, treating us poorly at times. But where we can do the work is to strengthen ourselves within, to create that better relationship with ourselves, with our Creator, you know, to be able to have a sanctuary within ourselves of strength.
DJ, let me ask you, give us a personal example, because you're a veteran and a lot of your work and a lot of your advice and your counseling, it centers around this concept of the warrior spirit. How have you in your own life enabled yourself to heal from emotional wounds?
Yeah, it's been a testing ground in my life, just like so many other people's. Going through loss of, you know, relatives, going through, you know, having things that happen in our family like suicides, losing a child, you know, years ago. But the most recent and probably one of the most significant, you know, thresholds of pain that I've stepped through is going through a divorce. being married for over 20 years, and we separated at the beginning of the pandemic, and then it started this, multi-year journey of deciding that we weren't going to continue together anymore, and it was devastating. I mean, emotionally, it was like the floor had fallen out of my life, and it was also all happening in the backdrop of the middle of the pandemic. So that just added, more to it. But it was, extremely painful. It was confusing. It was scary. It was not what was expected. So it wasn't, according to the life plan I thought we were building. So it was really painful. And one of the things I learned was, again, going back to these, small steps, of trying to figure out a way forward. And the first way was to change my mindset, because the first 6 weeks of it, I was so devastated. I was, on my own, living alone for the first time, and, just kind of processing all this. And I was so angry, scared, hurt, embarrassed, like I didn't even reach out to my closest people in my life for almost a month. And it was just that struggle. And so when you start to finally get your mind right about, what do I do with this now? Then you start to kind of pick your head up and say, what can I do with where I am now? And a big part of that was reframing it, just saying, this isn't something that other people haven't gone through, and in that moment you want to clarify what's happening, not magnify it. And I was doing a really good job of magnifying, the pain and making it worse. So once you start getting to that clarification point, you start saying, now what can I do? And a first step for that was reaching out to my closest people. It was starting to journal. It was starting to, kind of get the resources I needed to start moving forward again. And again, I'm a huge believer in those small steps, those little victories that can lead us to better places. But it's, trying to slow down. I really started to embrace the power of solitude and quiet, because it allowed me to let the dirt settle in my mud puddle. The habits I was practicing, being able to spend time outdoors, working out, calling friends, going through traditional ceremony, going through therapy. Like there's a lot of different options to get to where we need to go to build a bridge to a better place. Okay. And I'll tell you, it was as painful as it was transformational. And
okay. DJ, we're gonna take a break here. We'll come back and we'll talk a lot more. Stay with us, listeners. Elaine Miles is a busy actor who just appeared in the hit apocalyptic drama series The Last of Us. She has also portrayed beloved characters in Smoke Signals and Northern Exposure. We talked to her about her many roles on screen and her off-screen passions that include advocating for military veterans. Elaine Miles is our Native in the Spotlight on the next Native America Calling.
Repatriation is the return of ancestors and stolen culture. The Association on American Indian Affairs is hosting the 11th annual Repatriation Conference, Feeding the Fire, Advancing the Movement, in February 2026. This fully virtual conference will offer small group interactive workshops, strategies, networking, and more to advance domestic and international repatriation. More at Indian-Affairs.org. The association supports this show.
Thank you for tuning in today to Native America Calling. We are ringing in the new year with advice for maintaining a positive outlook. The start of the year is a time for resolutions, new diets, and new exercise routines. It is also a good time to reconnect with your own strengths to keep your momentum going. Give us a call. Join this conversation. The number is 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. And you can also reach out to us on our website, nativeamericacalling.com, or find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. Let's bring another guest into our conversation. This is Dr. Michael Yellowbird. He joins us now from Winnipeg, Manitoba, in Canada, and he is a professor at the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Manitoba. He's a citizen of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation. Michael, hello, and welcome to Native America Calling.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, Happy New Year. And let's talk more about how different people approach the new year. Many of us see it as an opportunity to overhaul our emotional and physical well being, doing away with bad habits, things like that. What's your advice for a New Year reset?
Well, I think one of the ways to think about it is that it may not be relative or important for everyone to have a reset. It may be that some people are already in process and they don't need to actually pull themselves out of what they're doing already. As long as they're making some progress, they're getting movement in, they're thinking and being in a place where they feel safe and secure and feel relatively happy enough. That's one of the things I think is that in the modern world we sort of idealize these situations where it's got to be a perfect situation. And there's not one size that fits all. There are going to be people that, no matter what happens, they're going to be succeeding and doing well. And people have this more, I guess, resilient sort of grit personality. There are others that, like the big part of the bell curve where people are going to be, making progress, having a slip back here and there. And the outliers are the smaller group that, maybe continue to have a lot of issues and a lot of struggles. So it's really important for people to remember not one size fits all, folks. So I think that's really one way I kind of look at it, kind of as a bell curve. So.
Yeah, that's helpful. I like that. Now, a lot of your research is focused on the impacts of colonization on Indigenous people, also how to incorporate Indigenous contemplative practices. It's a really, really interesting field of study. What are some practices that you've learned for people that need help with healing emotional wounds left by colonization?
Well, I think the first thing really is kind of really understanding who you are. And when I talk about that, I'm not talking just about emotionally, I'm talking about biologically too. There's been a lot of good research that's been done to kind of give us an idea of how sensitive and how we respond to the world and how we respond to stress, how we respond to, things that are challenging in our lives. For instance, there's a whole, big area of study on a gene called the COMP gene, which is a gene that codes for being a warrior or being a worrier. And this particular gene is really an important genetic marker that we're finding out that, affects our brain chemistry. And it may be that, why some people may slip behind and not be able to kind of fulfill some of the things they want to fulfill and whatever. Because, when the epigenetic situation is right, when they're not in a positive situation, we're not around positive people, when they're not making progress, or they're not being supported enough. And that's kind of one of the things that's really, really critical to think about. We Indigenous people come from collectivist cultures, so we have genetic markers that really sort of define that in a really interesting way. And there's a particular gene called the serotonin transporter gene that, is really active when we're in grouping, when we're cooperating with one another. So, change is not like for many people, it's not like a single individual kind of thing. That's pretty Western sort of non-collectivist kind of culture. A collectivist culture are people that, are integrated with one another. They're cooperating with one another, supporting one another. And when they have that particular kind of relationship, it really activates this particular gene. It's a collectivist gene that also codes for collectivism, also codes for humor as well. That's what, and so when we laugh, even at ourselves, or we laugh at our struggle, that it's really a positive thing, even though people say, well, you shouldn't laugh, that's inappropriate. Well, we know some different things are going on when a person is feeling stressed, or they're laughing at themselves, or self-deprecating. As they laugh, their serotonin levels go up, their dopamine levels go up, their brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which protects their brain cells, goes up. Their endocannabinoids in their body and their brain actually activate, so it dulls the pain. So laughter is really an important thing. So that's when you're priming yourself to do something, that's a really important thing to remember, is that being around a group of collectivist people, having a good sense of humor is really sort of built into our genes as Indigenous people. And when you look at the research, you're going to find out there are more Indigenous people with this particular genetic variant that causes a higher uplift with humor. This is one of the things that I'm convinced, and I think the people would be convinced that, why there's such a quickly rising and very troubling rate of dementia and Alzheimer's disease among indigenous populations. I've written about this topic. I've looked at this topic, taken a deep dive, and the rates are very, very disturbing. I mean, they're frightening, really. And some of the things that we used to do as indigenous people, like move, like laughter, like sleep well, like being a community, doesn't have anything to do with like working out or being sort of living in the Western industrialized world. It has everything to do with community, and we've developed those genes, as I say, the serotonin transporter genes, to be those kinds of people because it protects our brain.
Okay.
And so these are things I think, just for people to think about. We're not one size fits all. Some people may not be as humorous as others, and so on. So.
Yeah, Michael, this is really fascinating, and it totally jibes with something I heard a while back. I was told that there are cultural trace memories inside DNA. And I've been waiting for this to come up on a show because I'd like to ask someone who's an expert on these types of topics. But what you're describing, it sounds exactly like what I heard. Cultural trace memories in DNA.
Yeah, I'm not sure of that term where it came from, but what I do know is that epigenetically and genetically, we pass on different kinds of biological material from one generation to the next, especially with mothers and sons. There's been a lot of research done on telomeres, and the telomere is the cap at the end of the chromosome. If it's longer, generally it codes for better health and more vitality and less likelihood of getting cancers and diabetes and those kinds of things. We know that from the research. Elizabeth Blackburn did a lot of research on this. She won a Nobel Prize doing this work. Found out that mothers who have had traumatic experiences, very traumatic experiences, and it could go back to great-great-grandmother. Those experiences like starvation or war or, a lot of death and stress can shorten the telomeres, can erode them. That's pretty clear in the science. And those can be passed down generationally to people like yourself or myself from, maybe 3 or 4 great-grandmothers ago, and we can be born biologically older, which then sets us up for all kinds of things. Maybe this is why some people have more difficult time kind of changing during the new year or living up to those kinds of things, because those telomeres, which are very important, have been eroded and they're marked already. So this is the thing that's really important, is that, women should be protected. They should not be seeing, violence. They should be eating good nutritional food. They should be resting. All these things, for their own protection, but also for the next generation of kids that are coming along, because, we know this research now. And getting back to when you said some of those practices for indigenous mindfulness and contemplative practices, these are some of the things you have to know, because in order to get into any kind of practice, as I said, like that, it's really, really important to kind of know who you are, not only emotionally, spiritually and physically, but also biologically, because a lot of people kind of maybe hold that against themselves. I failed at this, I failed at that. And it could be that they have genetic markers that, are contributing to that, where where they see as lack of success. And so they shouldn't be so hard on themselves. They should put themselves, and we should put them in environments where we can sort of quiet or flip the switch on the genes so that, they have a better outcome. So.
Okay. Well, Michael, tell me more about what works for you. What types of practices have you been able to apply in your own life that resonate with these topics and these this science that you're describing to our listeners now? But how do you apply it?
Well, I mean, one of the things you have to know is like who you are, as I said. So, I've done DNA, I've done my microbiome tests, I've done, a lot of tests with food. It's a nutritional DNA test and stuff. So I get a pretty good idea of, what I need to do, how much sleep I need, how much exercise I need, how much emotional sort of support I need. So for me, it's come down to a science. And I think that it would be like that for most of us. We'd have to get a good picture of that in order to kind of know, like, what, I can get by on, 6 hours of sleep a night, right? Or I can get by on 7 hours of sleep, and I can wake up twice a night as long as I get this much deep level sleep, right? Or I can, I can do this or I can do that. I do a lot of this is traditional living, really. This morning I had a good workout. I had a really, really good push day. I worked really hard. I took a 25-minute, sauna at 194 degrees, and I did this all in the fasted state. Well, this is very, very similar to what our ancestors did. They did not wake up in the morning, open the fridge, put on coffee, or throw something in the microwave. The research shows that, one of the things that happened, with our ancestors is that the same thing I do. When I wake up in the morning, I don't eat. I refuel with some water, and I do my exercise. I go for a run, 4 or 5 mile run. At a zone 2, at about a 70% maximum of my heart rate. I'm 71 years old. I still do all these things, pretty easily, without any prescription drugs or, for emotions or for any physical or anything like this.
Okay.
So,
Michael, let me ask you this. Have you always lived this healthy a lifestyle your whole life? You've been like getting up, drinking water, going for a run?
Well, I've been doing that, but I didn't do it on a fasted state. I used to fast a lot, some years ago. I used to do long-term fast, like, half a month, 15, 16 days of fasting without anything except for water. I found out, that was good. I mean, it really, I was doing it for spiritual reasons, but also for biological and physical reasons. Found out that was too much for me. It breaks down the muscle after a while. Starts. This catabolic state happens, so it starts eating away your muscle. I realized our ancestors did that, right? So I used to do things like that. Now I don't do that. I intermittent fast every day for at least 16, 17, 18 hours, sometimes 20 hours a day, 1 meal a day, sometimes 2 meals a day, but I make sure I get enough calories in. So I've been doing that I've been running my whole life, running, exercising, playing basketball. I was in Taekwondo and a teacher for Taekwondo for years. I used to ride horses, run over the res, and so on, be busy, swim. But as I've gotten older, I've kind of taken a look at, what we did as indigenous people. And the things that we did is we just moved. We moved a lot, so many steps a day, lifting heavy stuff. And you do all these things, it's good for your body. And I haven't done it, like I said, the more intensely I've done is probably in the last 20 years where I've started doing a lot of intermittent fasting, a lot of heavy lifting, meditation. I've been meditating very deeply, since about 1975. So it's been 50 years that I've been practicing meditation. And for many years now, I've been teaching mindfulness meditation, and I've been certified as an international meditation teacher and scholar and trainer and that sort of thing. So those are things that are really important for me, to get in my meditation time, to get in my run time, to get in my heavy lifting time, to get into my sit time, my visit time, my sleep time.
Michael, let me ask you this, though, because this is really inspiring. To hear you describe your lifestyle at 71 years old, it's absolutely amazing. But I'll tell you what, I'm more than 10 years younger than you, and I couldn't keep up with a schedule like what you're describing. And I'm thinking of other listeners who might, they just might not be there yet. So can you give us just like some positive tips or strategies for how to just kind of, because I've spent a lot of time on the couch in 2025, and how to kind of just get going towards the direction that you're at. Because it sounds like to live a lifestyle like you have, that's going to take some time. Like DJ was saying earlier, it's little steps. What are some little steps you can give us to kind of get us in that direction?
Well, I think accountability is really big for me. I can tell you what I do. I can't tell you what it's good for everybody, but accountability is good. And it's like brushing your teeth or flossing your teeth. You've got to do it every day. And what I do is I keep a journal. I used to do that when I used to, my dream life. I used to keep journal after journal and, this spiral notebook after spiral notebook. But I keep workout journals. And I did it for my meditation for many years. I don't do it anymore just because it comes so natural. But it's just, that accountability to yourself, is to kind of keep a journal on what you do. If you don't do it, it's not going to be meaningful to you, right? And you're going to forget where you are. So my journal, that I do is I write in my journal and I say, how my lifting was that particular day, or what my push day was like. And Saturday, April 8th, 2023 was my run day. And I ran, 10K that day. And I ended up with allergies later in the day. It was melting snow, probably snow mold. I wrote on there, right?
Okay. Well, Michael, this is helpful, though. This
23.
is helpful. I like this because your diary is loaded with, like, high energy types of activities. But I'm just thinking, okay, I went for a walk. I walked a half a mile today on such and such a date, or I ate a healthy breakfast today. I like this strategy. I like this idea of a journal.
Yeah.
Really, really helpful. Super good. We're going to take another break, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk more with our guests. And we still need to talk to Dr. Eduardo Duran, who's up in Bozeman, Montana. He's going to chime in as well with regards to his thoughts for how we can start off 2026 with a good start. We're going to have a good year coming up, and we're just planning that, getting our strategies and our tips in order. And we still got the phone lines open for any listeners who would like to join this conversation. Just give us a call, 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Let us know what works for you. If you're one of these people who sets a New Year's resolution, and if you've had success with New Year's resolutions in the past, or just making changes, this whole idea of small steps and how they can lead up to bigger steps, maybe share some of your experiences with how you've gone about making a change in your life. What's worked for you, maybe what hasn't worked for you, or any tips you have. I always like to hear from listeners who can chime in and join our conversation with their input, their insights, their perspectives. So again, that number is 1-800-996-2848. Native America Calling. We've got our studio in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and our producers are standing by waiting for you to call. So just pick up that phone, call 1-800-996-2848. We'll be right back.
Tribal Development Partners, helping tribes build toward their goals through 105L leasing and essential facility development, empowering sovereignty, strengthening community. More at tribaldevpartners.com, proud supporters of this show.
Ready to expand your reach and inspire change? Kaufman & Associates crafts culturally grounded communication strategies for Native audiences. More at kaufmaninc.com, KAUFFMANINC.com.
We're glad you are spending time with us today on Native America Calling. For many people, this is the first full workday of the year, and we are now taking the opportunity to get a rundown of tips to start the year off right. Do you have traditions or ceremonies, perhaps, that help you make the transition from one calendar year to the next? Let us know. Give us a call, 1-800-996-2848. That's 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us now from Bozeman, Montana, we have Dr. Eduardo Duran. He's a psychologist and author of Healing the Soul Wound. And Ed, thank you again for joining the show. And like DJ, you are also a veteran, and you've worked counseling fellow veterans. I want to ask you, how do you approach someone who might be struggling with readjusting to civilian life, a veteran?
Well, I consider all of life a ceremony, and I consider war and being a veteran part of that ceremony. And so when I talk to veterans, I usually try to reconnect them back to spirit, and the way to do that is by consulting their dreams. And this is a real, if the listeners don't hear anything as I say, it's the dreams is the most important part, because through the VA system and Western therapeutic methods, dreams are not really accounted for in the healing process. And so most veterans, when I see them and they're going through PTSD and all of those struggles, it's usually dreams that are tormenting them. And a lot of times it is because of those dreams that they use substance, alcohol, and those sort of things, mainly to make the dreams go away. And so what I do instead is I encourage them to make contact with whoever's in the dream and ask them what they want, and then to make a bargain with them and offer them an offering. And most of the time in the dreams, especially for combat veterans and a lot of Vietnam veterans, it's Vietnamese people that are approaching them in the dream, and of course they get scared and they wake up and then they drink. And so I said, instead of doing that, don't forget your manners as an indigenous person. Why would you do somebody comes to your door? Well, you say hello. So go back in the dream when they approach you again and say hello and ask them what they want. And then if they want too much, you can bargain. And so you can offer an offering instead of that. Then I want to ask you to preface this by saying that whatever I say here today, I want to honor the over 35 years of clinical work and over 70,000 clinical hours of doing therapy with mostly Native people in hospitals, community programs, tribal programs. And what I have learned is all from the work that I've done with these relatives. So I want to offer my appreciation to all of the people that are bringing these words today into my space, into my spirit, to be able to put them out there in order to hopefully help somebody. And so that's kind of how I approach work, not with just veterans, but also with all the clinical people that I've seen over the years. One of the first things that I ask people at intake, are you dreaming anything? And a lot of times they are. I said, well, bring it in, because that is what's going to tell us what you really need, because we need to access your spirit. And I don't have the capability to access that directly. There are people that can do that. So the next best thing is, let's talk about your dreams. And traditionally, all cultures, and I believe all spiritual traditions, came from the dream itself. And so vision and dream has been the place where all that's known as religion and spirituality and practice has emerged from the dream. And so I really, want to make sure that people listen to their dreams and start talking about their dreams. And one of the interventions that I hear Columbus and the original colonizers did is to try to prohibit Native people about talking about their dreams. And that's how powerful they are. And one dream has changed whole civilizations. For those of you who are familiar with the Old Testament, one dream changed all of that civilization way back 6,000 years ago. So the dream continues to dream itself. And one of my favorite sayings is something that the Kalahari relatives from Africa say, where they say there is always a dream dreaming us. And so I believe that right now there's a dream dreaming us in having this talk that we're having today.
Yeah, that's really, really intriguing, the whole idea of dreams. And what about different tribal backgrounds, different cultures? Because I like what you're saying, but I know, I was always raised that you have to be careful with people who you might meet in a dream. Sometimes you have to be really careful about what you say to them and how you interact with them.
Yeah, and I've been blessed enough to have been able to have worked in depth psychotherapy with probably people from 100 different tribes. And some people do have those taboos. And for instance, in some tribes, they say, we're not supposed to talk about our dead ancestors or dead relatives. And I say, but your dead relative came to your dream, so it's not me bringing it up. Apparently your relative wants to tell you something. And to approach that with respect and to understand that it is spirit that is moving the process, and that ancestor is probably trying to bring you a healing message. So I think if we shape-shift the conversation around the taboo, because a lot of taboos also are not indigenous in origin. A lot of these taboos come from colonization. And so I also try to help distinguish between what's colonized thinking and what's the original indigenous way, which we probably cannot know because I wasn't there. So we can do the best we can and by reinterpreting the process of the dream itself. And so that's my approach. And over the years, it's been very effective working with dreams, because my understanding is that once I stop seeing the patient, they will continue dreaming. And so if they learn how to interpret and how to work with their dreams, they take that ability with themselves. And as I tell them, even into the spirit world, we're probably dreaming there. So you take this gift that the Creator has given us, which is direct contact with the mystery. I consider dreams to be directly sent by the Creator, him or herself, to help us live lives here in the best way that we can as pitiful human beings that we are.
Mm-hmm. This is really, really cool, Eduardo. Now, you have another book. It's titled Buddha in Red Face, and you weave together indigenous wisdom with Buddhist teachings. What are some Buddhist approaches when it comes to healing that will be helpful for our listeners?
Well, I think that the greatest gift that the Buddha gave us is also a gift that comes from a traditional teachings, and that's mindfulness. And that's where we, sit in meditation and see that these mind states are arising and falling, and they're not solid at all. They're just mind states. Thoughts are empty. And I really think that that is one of the greatest gifts that Buddhism has given us. And that book basically is a story of what I consider my root indigenous teacher, whom I met as a graduate student, and I didn't know he was my teacher, and I resisted seeing him. But as it turned out, he gave me the Rosetta Stone to be able to interpret a lot of the teachings that he was giving me. And so it's in story form and it's in fictional form, but I try to capture as much of the Buddhism and also indigenous, what would be known as awakening practices, so that people can recapture, who they are as indigenous people. I know we had this all along. And more recently, I wrote this book, and I call it Finding the Lost Buddha on Turtle Island, because I strongly believe that there was completely awakened beings here on Turtle Island way before Buddhism came here from Asia. And, Black Elk, people like that, were completely awakened beings. And I think that we need to retake who we are, our spiritual traditions, and decolonize ourselves and bring the purity of our teachings back into the foreground here. And then we can adapt other teachings and enhance on that, but we really need to decolonize and realize that we already knew what was going on here on Turtle Island. And so that's been my latest what I call my latest heresy and blasphemy that I put out, because I felt that Buddhism was already here. The Buddha was already here on Turtle Island. And of course, one of the prophecies from one of the great East Indian teachers, Padmasambhava, he predicted that the Buddha would be in the land of the red face. And he predicted this in the year 700 or so. So it kind of fulfills, the prophecy fulfills itself.
Yeah, that's really something to think about. Eduardo, let's go back to the topic of mindfulness. And do you have any technique, something simple that a person can use to just be more mindful as they go about their day?
Yes, and simple teachings, which are simple but not easy to do. A simple thing like getting up and greeting the sunrise. It's something that is very easy to do, and you can just face the sun and just say thank you. And that can become a practice, because now you have to get up to do that. But if you forget to do that, well, then, the next day burn some cedar and acknowledge that smoke is also releasing the sunrise that you missed. And easy things like that, and to take it one day at a time. This is where, having worked a lot of years in substance abuse healing, the 12 steps, take it one day at a time, greet the sunrise, and then, like Brother Michael says, drink some water, take a walk, and go easy with yourself, especially if you're older and if you have some challenges with your body, just bless those challenges and just do the best you can with them, and just do everything as much as you can, knowing that there's a symbolic reason for what you're doing. And, like the other day I mentioned my email to the other gentleman that was calling me about this program, and it says Soul Healing 16. Well, that's my email, but it also means psychotherapy or soul healing in Greek. And of course, 16 being the sacred number. So every time I do my email, it reminds me that, there is something holy moving. And it's saying in one of the tribes in the Lakota tradition, and basically translates to something holy is moving, so that everything we do, realize that there's a sacred aspect to it, and to remind yourself of that as you're doing it. And it's a simple practice, but it takes every day. We need to do a little bit of it until it becomes a habit, and then it becomes ingrained in us. And I heard the word decolonizing earlier. I forget who said that, but I've told people, that I've worked with over the years, if you're going to decolonize, the only way to do that is to do it. You have to do decolonized things, which basically then reintegrates who you are as a Native person. And it's that reintegration of yourself that then sustains you, and then you can do the other ceremonial things, the other hard things that you need to do. But if you're not there present with yourself because you're decolonized and depersonalized from yourself, well, then it's going to be really hard to do that. So the whole thing is to restore the person to who they are in the present moment. And it's a very simple practice, and it could be at any time of the day that you're doing something. Just step back and say, doing this, I know I'm doing this. And that's all you got to do. That's mindfulness. That's the whole gig.
Yeah, that's helpful, Ed. Really helpful. Thank you so much. DJ Vanis, I want to go back to you as we begin to wind down the show. And we've heard already on the show from some of the other guests, it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach for how to approach the new year well. But when it comes to healing from a difficult event, is there a universal message that people can understand or perhaps experience or share with regard to that?
I think there's well, first of all, it's a common universal. We all go through that, and I think one of the keys to moving forward is answering the question, what story am I telling myself about what I'm going through right now, or what I've just been through? We're all storytellers, especially in our tribal communities. We come from an oral tradition. That's the way customs, knowledge, language, ceremony was all handed down. Most of us didn't have a written language. So we're a story. When we talk about the power of story, which was mentioned by some of the other guests too, which is beautiful, that when we go back to that, we're tapping into a real source of power for ourselves. But being able to, sometimes we don't tell a good story. We have something go wrong and we lament. We spiral. Everything is doom and gloom. Nothing will ever be the same. Why do I even try? And that same thing can happen to another person, and they have a different story. They say, well, this stinks. This isn't what I would wish on an enemy, but yet here I am, and not only am I going to get through this, I'm going to grow through this. I'm going to learn grab every little nugget that this challenge is teaching me to store it away, not just for my benefit, but so I can share it with others. It's a very different story, and we're all storytellers, so we need to tell better stories about the outcomes that we want to see, because stories drive behavior. We live up to them or we live down to them. So create a better story in 2026. Start talking to yourself in a better, more positive way. Like I said, we all struggle. We're all going to need that support structure to lean on. But really where that all begins is the way that we talk about ourselves and that story that we're creating about what we want to see on the journey ahead.
All right. DJ, thank you so much for coming on the show today. All of our guests. DJ, next time, we've talked about Legos, we've talked about Weebles. Maybe we'll talk about Labubu dolls. How about that? Those are a big hit this Christmas.
All right, deal. You got it.
All right. Big thanks to our guests today, DJ Vanis, Dr. Eduardo Duran, and Dr. Michael Yellowbird. We're back Monday talking with Cayuse and Nez Perce actor Elaine Miles. Our executive producer is Art Hughes. Our producers are Andy Murphy, Sol Traverso, and Joe Thompson. Marino Spencer is the engineer. Sho McPolin is the digital producer. Nola Daves Moses is the distribution director. Bob Peterson is the network manager for Native Voice One. Clifton Chadwick is our national underwriting sales director. Antonia Gonzalez is the anchor for National Native News. Charles Sather is our chief operations officer. The president and CEO of Koahnic Broadcast Corporation is Jacqueline Salee. Happy New Year. Have a safe weekend. I'm Sean Spruce.
Who protects Indian country? Amerind does. As the only 100% tribally owned insurance carrier, Amerind helps strengthen tribal communities by providing reliable insurance coverage and keeping dollars in Indian country. From property and liability to commercial auto and tribal workers' compensation, Amerind is here to protect what matters. Celebrating 40 years of serving Indian country. Learn more at Amerind.com. That's AMERIND.com. Repatriation is the return of ancestors and stolen culture. The Association on American Indian Affairs is hosting the 11th annual Repatriation Conference, Feeding the Fire, Advancing the Movement, in February 2026. This fully virtual conference will offer small group interactive workshops, strategies, networking, and more to advance domestic and international repatriation. More at Indian-Affairs.org. The association supports this show.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.